What's going on, guys? This is Tower number 9 coming to you with another Star Wars Unlimited TCG gameplay video. This time we have another kind of aggressive versus defensive set of games here. I am playing IG-88 using Tarkentown, and my opponent is using Luke Skywalker and the kind of classic 30 life base there for a double vigilance setup. So let's see how this one goes. I am excited to test out IG-88. He's one of the leaders that I think I hadn't had that much success with him when he came out, and I'm kind of trying to figure out some more stuff. The new Cantina Braggart unit seems like it works well for him. Trying to kind of figure out how to get those things going and figure out an IG-88 composition that might turn out to be effective. We'll have to see, but might turn out to be effective. Okay, so getting into this game, I have a pretty decent starting hand here. I'm going to start off with a Death Star Stormtrooper. Just a 3/1 with no card text, Imperial Trooper, kind of a classic aggressive unit. My opponent plays out R2-D2. Since my opponent's playing Luke, I know that he's probably going to shield as his next action, so I'm going to play out the Cantina Braggart. One costs 0/3, but gets +2 attack when attacking. My opponent indeed shields Luke, and I will take the initiative here. So in this matchup, so one thing I'll note is that I actually have 25 base HP, not 30. We haven't changed it yet, but that is the case. So in this matchup, I'm trying to outnumber my opponent when possible and push damage through onto the base. So there's different angles that I can take with this. I have a Fallen Lightsaber in hand, and one thing that I could do is I could lead off by playing the Fallen Lightsaber on the Trooper. Another thing that I could do is I could play the Disabling Fang Fighter and remove R2's shield, also developing my board with another unit. Also, I could, in theory, play Open Fire or I Am Your Father, but both of those are going to be really ineffective because of the shield on R2, so they would be more things that I would save for a later enemy unit. For now, though, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to resource the I Am Your Father. And I'm going to just lead off with IG-88's action here. So as an action, exhaust IG-88, attack with a unit. If you control more units than the defending player, the attacker gets +1/+0 for this attack. So that is going to be the option that I go with. I'm going to just, before R2 can take down that trooper, I'm going to do 4 damage to the enemy base. I'm trying to push damage through before my opponent can really get set up. My opponent will then kill the trooper with R2. It is conceivable that it would have been better for me to put the Fallen Lightsaber on that trooper so that he would survive that attack. I think, in retrospect, that might have been a stronger play. Even if my opponent hits a Wing Leader or a Fleet Lieutenant, wouldn't be able to kill that trooper in one attack with R2, and would allow me to do a lot more damage. On the other hand, it would be vulnerable to Takedown or to Vigilance because the trooper would only have 4 life. As it stands, I'm going to put the Fallen Lightsaber on the Cantina Braggart instead, who has 6 life and will thus be substantially harder for my opponent to remove. 6 life with the upgrade, that is. So now this Cantina Braggart is a 3/6 that gets +2 on offense. Pretty good profile. And so I could attack here and defeat R2, or I could just go in for 5 damage to the enemy base. However, my opponent gets to do an action first. So Tunewalker here. I believe Tunewalker was a quite experienced player of Star Wars Destiny, but I believe this is actually his first game of Star Wars Unlimited. So we're going to see, and You're My Only Hope. Look at the top card of your deck. You may play it. It costs 5 less to play. If your base has 5 or less remaining HP, you may play it for free instead. Hits a Wing Leader, giving 2 experience to R2. So now, previously I was maybe thinking Cantina Braggart could kill that R2 and thus put me in a better position with respect to outnumbering my opponent, which is something that I want to do since I'm playing IG-88. But under the circumstances, I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's going to be better to just hit the base. So one thing I will note about this, though, is that I could have hit R2 for 5, then on my next turn played the Fang Fighter and removed 1 experience from R2 to kill him. But if I had hit R2, my own Cantina Braggart would take 3 damage, which would then put R2 in range to just kill him with another attack, and my opponent would have the initiative. So if the initiative dynamic was different and I expected to retain the initiative, it might have been a good idea to attack R2 and then clear him with the Fang Fighter removing an experience, but as it stands, that wasn't the case. So my opponent swings in for 2 damage with the Wing Leader. Looking at my hand here, my options are Open Fire, Fang Fighter, or the First Legion Snowtrooper. Fang Fighter is probably the best of those 3 cards. In terms of it'll develop my board and it will weaken that R2. Then the Cantina Braggart could potentially clear it in a later turn. For now, though, I just want to hit the enemy base, so 5 damage to the enemy base. R2 is now active. Ends up hitting my base for 3. Looking at that top card there, R2 does get to look at the top card every time you attack, so it does have this positive filtering effect. So now I'm going to bring out the Fang Fighter and remove an experience token from R2. When played, you may defeat an upgrade, and experience counters are upgrades. So now I have a stronger unit than my opponents in space. And I'm just highlighting there. So an experience token is a token upgrade. It is a token upgrade. My opponent plays Vigilance here. Very strong play, choosing to heal 5 damage from the base and defeat a unit with 3 or less HP, killing my Fang Fighter. I take the initiative. Vigilance here is actually a huge problem for me. It's probably one of the best cards that you can play against a aggressive build, because not only did he clear out one of my units, which is in itself a tempo swing, he also gave his base 5 more life, which is going to make it, it's just going to give him that extra bit of toughness that I'm going to have to try and chew through, which is really not what I want to see. So in this situation, I'm going to have the Cantina Braggart take out the weakened R2. I don't want to have R2 still around, potentially threatening my other units, potentially getting other upgrades or experience counters. And I do want to try and get above my opponent in unit count. So this turn, I can actually play all these other cards if I want to. I can play the First Legion Snowtrooper, the Forced Choke, and the TIE Fighter. My opponent plays C-3PO. When played or on attack, choose a number, then look at the top card of your deck. If its cost is the chosen number, you may reveal and draw it. I don't remember what my opponent guessed here. I think it might have been 2 or 3, but does not get it in any case. And now I'm going to try and develop my board. So I play the TIE LN Fighter, just a 2-1 for 1. Kind of a basic sort of weenie ship, but it does trade with that. It would trade with the Wing Leader, but my opponent plays another Wing Leader, buffing his first Wing Leader. This is one of the strengths of Wing Leader. It combos with itself. So he now has a 4-3 Wing Leader. I play out the First Legion Snowtrooper. You might be wondering why I wouldn't play Forced Choke, which is a solid removal card to kill that Wing Leader. The answer is that Forced Choke doesn't work on vehicle units, which is actually a significant weakness, and does mean that his Wing Leader is able to kill my TIE. I play out IG-88 here. Each other friendly unit gains raid 1. They get +1/+0 when attacking. And IG-88's own stats are 5-4, which is pretty robust. My opponent or not robust. It's actually the opposite of robust. He is the most vulnerable leader in the game, but 5 attack is the most attack of any leader in the game other than Vader. And IG-88 comes out 2 turns earlier, so that's really where the strength may lie. I decide to use Tarkin Town to deal 3 damage to a wounded unit, defeating the experienced Wing Leader. And then I have IG-88 swing into the enemy base, inflicting a further 5 damage. I'm not going to play the Forced Choke on C-3PO, because he isn't, in my opinion, a high enough value card for me to want to clear him in this situation. I'm preferring to just focus on the enemy base, focus on clearing that out. And my opponent's at 16 life to my 20. My board is a lot better, but he's about to get Luke. I have a Forced Choke, and I do have 2 copies of the Snowtrooper Lieutenant in hand, who can make an Imperial unit attack at +2 strength. My opponent uses Takedown to immediately kill IG-88, defeat a unit with 5 or less remaining HP. Really strong card against low HP leaders. IG-88 and Sabine Wren can both be immediately defeated by playing Takedown, which is a very solid move. I'm going to, I believe at this point what I do is I play a Snowtrooper Lieutenant to have my first Legion Snowtrooper attack, and I don't remember if I clear C-3PO or if I decide to swing for the base. I think I clear C-3PO here. So what I'm trying to do is get my opponent to have fewer pieces on the board and get myself to a state where I am going to be able to use IG-88's ability to attack with bonus strength by outnumbering my opponent. It's not going to happen this turn, but it should happen in future turns. Arguably, I should have just pushed towards the base because the one damage from C-3PO is not that strong, though I am also denying potential card draw. My opponent deploys Luke, and here, so Luke is a 4/7, and here's actually where I make a critical error. So I play a Snowtrooper Lieutenant and have the Cantina Braggart attack Luke. I'm thinking that this is a trade, but I'm actually wrong. And the reason I'm wrong is that the +2 stats don't apply. And because the Cantina Braggart is not Imperial. So Snowtrooper Lieutenant gets +2 attack, but only if he gives +2 attack, but only if the unit is Imperial. So I end up saying, you know what, like that was my play, it was my mistake, I'll own it or whatever. And so Luke takes 5 damage, and then my opponent plays Luke's lightsaber, healing all the damage and giving a shield. So that's basically a lost game immediately, or like close to it, because it's a huge reversal from that blunder. But I'm going to play it out and see if I can manage to do enough damage to get through. However, this was a super negative turn for me because of that blunder. If I had instead, like, even if I had just used IG-88 to attack the enemy base for 6, I would be in a way better spot than having my guy go into Luke, die. I've played the Snowtrooper Lieutenant for no value from his ability, and then additionally Luke heals all that damage. That's critically bad. But we will see how things develop. I do outnumber my opponent, and I do have the initiative, so those are some upsides. I can attack. I have 6 damage on the board. I can make it 7 damage with IG-88's ability. If Luke goes low on life, I can hit him with Force Choke, but it's unlikely to happen because he does have that shield. And so I'm really in a negative. I'm really in a negative position at this point. Luke ends up hitting my base there for 7 damage, dropping me down to 11 life. I'm going to play a Snowtrooper Lieutenant to have. I drew all 3 Snowtrooper Lieutenants this game. I play one Snowtrooper Lieutenant to have another one hit the base for 4. My opponent then has a Fleet Lieutenant to have Luke hit my base for 9, and I do not have an answer for that Wing Leader in space there. So that's actually just going to be it, because the Wing Leader can swing in and clear my base, and I can do 5 damage to the enemy base, leaving him at 7 life, but that's not enough to get the win. So that's going to do it for this one. Basically, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know what would have happened if I had not made that huge blunder. Um, I think there's a chance he might have been able to race me and win with an upgraded Luke and stuff, but uh, that was a gigantic blunder by me. Losing the upgraded Cantina Braggart, not killing Luke, and then having him play Luke's lightsaber is just incredibly negative. So that's kind of the main takeaway that I had that game. There are a few other things. I do actually think it would have been better for me to push more damage to the base instead of clearing C-3PO. If my opponent was -4 life, now to be clear, that wouldn't have won the game here. But if my opponent was -4 life here, it would have made some difference. And I mean, if we think about a situation where I push for the base with instead of clearing C-3PO and he's -4, and then instead of attacking into Luke, I have the Cantina Braggart hit the base for another 4, then it would be my opponent would be at 4 life at this point, and I would be able to potentially swing with the Cantina Braggart for more damage on my own turn. So maybe in that situation, he uses one of his Luke attacks to clear the Braggart instead of using it in order to maybe he uses a Luke attack to clear the braggart instead of hitting my base, and therefore my base has more health. Hard to say exactly what would have happened. Very possible he would have stabilized anyway and killed me. He showed an Obi-Wan Kenobi that he had in hand, which would have been a big defensive obstacle for me. So it's possible that even if I had not made those errors, I would have been defeated nevertheless. However, um, in that case, the big reversal from Luke's lightsaber after the blundered attack there was pretty devastating for me, and that really hurt my position. So that was game one, but we actually did play two more games of this. So we are going to. You can see me kind of highlighting random stuff as my opponent and I were talking over the result of the game afterwards and discussing what all happened. But we are going to do a game two. Once again, it's going to be Luke, same decks, and we're going to be playing out this matchup and seeing what comes of it. So once again, IG-88 double aggression versus Luke double vigilance. One other note on that last one is that in the post-game commentary, my opponent mentioned that he had a wing leader in hand on the turn that he had played the "You're My Only Hope" and hit another wing leader. In that situation, I probably would have just played the wing leader that I have in hand because I consider wing leader buffing a turn one or turn two play to be one of the strongest openings in the game. He ended up getting the same result anyway from I keep saying I am your father from "You're My Only Hope." And I do think that if he had instead, I do think if he had just played the wing leader, it might have been better. On the other hand, maybe he would have hit a powerful 5 cost unit and dealt me a huge obstacle. Maybe he gets like a vigilant honor guard out there, and I'm like, oh man, this is a big deal. So hard to say exactly, but I think I might have taken the sure thing in that scenario and just played the wing leader rather than going for the gamble. Okay, so this time I'm going to start off with a First Legion Snowtrooper, and my opponent immediately takes the initiative. This is obviously this is a development I'm very happy with because it means that he does not have a turn one play. So my opponent is down a card, not or is down a turn one play, so the board is less developed. Once again, plays "You're My Only Hope." Looks at the top card, can play it for 5 less, and hits a Restored Arc. Restored Arc's a good unit, but "You're My Only Hope" is not the best way to play it. If that had been played just for its normal cost, he would have been able to then give it a shield, which I think would have been substantially more productive. I'm going to play out General Veers, 3 cost 3/3. Your other friendly Imperial units get +1/+1. My opponent takes the initiative again, and I use IG-88's ability to have the First Legion Snowtrooper swing in at +2. One from IG-88's ability, since I outnumber my opponent, and one from the General Veers there. So now 26-25. Pretty favorable development, all things considered, and we're going to see how it continues. So right now, my opponent has the Restored Arc, which can attack and deal some damage while also healing his base for 1. Pretty strong unit. Not only is it like you got a decent basic stat line, the Restore 1 also does help in some cases. So actually one of my favorite units, even though it's a little bland, but still a card that I think is really cool. So in this situation, my opponent has the initiative. I can right now do 7 damage to the base on board because I would be able to attack with both the Snowtrooper for 4 again if I use IG-88 +3 from Veers. My opponent plays a Wing Leader. When played, give 2 experience tokens to another friendly Rebel unit. Buffs up the Restored Arc, and I play Aggression. I'm going to choose to defeat the 2 upgrades. The experience tokens are upgrades, and then deal 4 damage to a unit. I keep messing up counters versus tokens. They are experience tokens. They are not counters, I believe. So with that unit cleared, my opponent uses Luke's ability to give the Wing Leader a shield. I attack the base for 4 and then for 3. So good chunks of damage being inflicted by me. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. Maybe just thanks to my opponent's slow start, I have managed to get into a much better spot here I also think that the fact that my opponent was mostly deploying to space, or entirely deploying to space thus far, has prevented me from distracting myself with taking out units rather than just going for the face. They say that you should go face a lot with aggressive decks, but that's a lesson that I have not entirely learned. I am definitely often trying to play for value and good unit trades and stuff more than I should be when I play these more aggressive builds, I think. All right, so it is gonna be Tunewalker with the initiative this turn. Has a shielded wing leader, but my presence is in the ground arena. So the question is, how is he going to answer that? "19 life to 25, 5 resources, and 5 cards in hand for Tunewalker." Thinking about what his strongest option is going to be to try and slow down my attack. If he had a copy of Vigilance, a Vigilance to kill General Veers and heal the base by 4 would be, or by 5 would be pretty sick. He ends up playing a Vigilant Honor Guards, 5 cost 4, 6, while this unit is undamaged against Sentinel. So a pretty strong combat unit, and will provide Sentinel at least at first. So I have to think about how to best remove this. If I just charge my units into it, it would kill both of them. That seems like an undesirable outcome. I could have one of the units attack it, and then because it's damaged, it wouldn't have Sentinel, so the other one could attack the base. The problem with that approach is that the Vigilant Honor Guards would then be still alive going into the next turn, and 4 attack is enough to kill IG-88 in 1 hit. So I decide I'm going to play Forced Choke, deal 5 damage to a non-vehicle unit. That unit's controller draws a card. So 5 damage to the Vigilant Honor Guard, and my opponent draws a card. Now the Vigilant Honor Guard is heavily damaged, and I'm going to be able to do a strong attack here with my First Legion Snowtrooper. So First Legion Snowtrooper gets +2 attack and overwhelm if it attacks a damaged unit. And that's an opportunity for me to do some major damage here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play out the Cell Block Guard. A 3/3 with Sentinel becomes a 4/4 with Sentinel thanks to General Veers. And then I'm going to have I can use IG-88's ability to have the First Legion Snowtrooper attack into the Vigilant Honor Guard. It will have 2 strength base, +1 for Veers, +1 for IG, that's 4, +2 for attacking a damaged unit, that's 6, and it gets overwhelmed. It gets overwhelmed. It only needs 1 damage to kill the honor guard, so then 5 damage gets through to the base, and that ends up being very impactful. It clears that important unit and does heavy damage to the base. The conditional overwhelm from the First Legion Stormtrooper really paying off. So opponent's down to 14 life to my 23. Cell Block Guard in position. The Cell Block Guard is, I think, exceptionally useful here because when I deploy IG-88, I'm worried that he can get picked off. So having a Sentinel in position so that an enemy unit can't attack into IG-88 seems pretty relevant. In this case, I don't think there's going to be ambush stuff. So, that's not as much of a consideration since there aren't enemy units on the ground. But I think that having a Sentinel in play when you get IG-88 on field is going to be pretty relevant. So IG-88 deploys and hits the enemy base for 5. And that was actually a slight misplay. What I should have done is had IG-88 deploy before I attacked with General Veers, because then IG-88 when he's deployed as a unit gives your friendly units raid 1, so that your other friendly units raid 1. So then I would have been able to attack for 1 more damage. Once again, my opponent has a takedown for IG-88, defeating him immediately. Same as last time. Was able to get 1 attack before being removed by takedown. But the enemy base is real low. I'm going to send in a Snowtrooper Lieutenant to have this guy swing into the base, inflicting. It actually should have been 6 damage here. I think we messed it up because he should have been buffed by General Veers, but my opponent concedes at this point anyway, since he doesn't have a way to clear Veers. He can deploy Luke, but Veers will attack and defeat his base before Luke gets a chance to do anything. So that time it was a win for the aggressive IG-88. Now, to be fair, my opponent had a pretty slow start. Not being able to have that turn 1 play is pretty negative. And then on turn 2, he only got a 2 value unit out, not a 3 value unit. So a bit behind in general. And so in that case, I was able to overwhelm the defensive build, and we're gonna go, round three, 2 out of 3. Let's see if I can win the match here, or if my opponent Tunewalker is gonna be able to prevail. Opponent leads with R2. So I had the same start as in the first game, with the ability to play both the Death Star Stormtrooper and the Cantina Braggart on the first turn. But what I didn't realize is that because my opponent had the initiative this time, I wasn't going to be able to deploy both of those units and retain the initiative myself, which meant that deploying the Death Star Stormtrooper would actually be bad because R2 would just clear it, losing only his shield. So I actually decided, okay, you know what I'm doing? I'm just going to take the initiative. I'm just going to. So now my Cantina Braggart can make the first attack, and I'm not worried about my unit just getting cleared immediately. Once again, I draw into a fallen lightsaber, and we're gonna see how I make use of it here. Okay, so this turn I could play the cell block guard that I have in hand, but I decided I'm going to go with the fallen lightsaber instead. The reason for that is that I was worried that my opponent might have a wing leader or a fleet lieutenant, and if he had either of those to give R2 +2, he would be able to clear the cell block guard, taking no damage thanks to the shield, and put me in a very negative state if I had gone with the cell block guard play. So the Fallen Lightsaber comes out instead, giving +3/+3 to the Cantina Braggart, who is not a force unit, so the ability doesn't apply. My opponent indeed does have a Wing Leader, so I'm feeling good about my decision not to deploy the Cell Block Guard this turn. Wing Leader giving 2 experience tokens to R2. Cantina Braggart just goes straight for the base, dealing 5 damage. My opponent has R2 swing into the Cantina Braggart. R2 loses his shield, but the Cantina Braggart takes 3 damage, and we're gonna keep on trucking here. Now, interesting fact: I do this turn have some. Uh, I have some cards that can remove upgrades. Both the Fang Fighter thing that is it a Fang Fighter or is it a Claw? I don't remember if it's called a Fang Fighter or a Claw Fighter. It's something like that. But that could have removed an experience token from R2, which would take him out of range to kill the Cantina Braggart. Or I could have played Aggression to remove potentially both the experience tokens. But I didn't choose to do that. Instead, I'm going to go for the base for 5, and then I'm going to play out this Imperial Interceptor to kill his Wing Leader. So, enemy base down to 20 life. My Imperial Interceptor, when played, you may deal 3 damage to a space unit, kills the Wing Leader. I'm feeling pretty good about that. The Ground Arena is not good, but I have gotten some value there. My opponent plays You're My Only Hope again. Top card is a Vigilance, not what I want to see. So with that Vigilance, again chooses to repair 5 damage and defeat a unit with 3 or less HP, and my Imperial Interceptor is not in the game for long. Very negative development for me. I'm going to take the initiative. I arguably should have used Tarkentown here, but I didn't do it. And I'm going to make up for that. I'm going to make up for that by using Tarkentown here. Now, I do think, it might have been better to Fang Fighter and remove the, if I Fang Fighter and remove the experience, then I could, in theory, have the Cantina Brawler still alive. But I think in practice, if he had hit that same Vigilance, he would have just killed the Brawler instead of the Interceptor, or in that case, the Fighter. So ends up being, okay, I think. We'll see how this develops. I decide that I'm going to use Tarkentown to clear R2. I don't want R2 on the field when I deploy IG-88, because a wing leader or a fleet lieutenant would allow R2 to kill IG-88, which is really not what I want. So Tarkentown coming out there to take that epic action and clear the dangerous enemy unit buffed by that wing leader. My opponent plays the 5-cost Vigilant Honor Guard. I'm like, okay. That's the same unit mentioned earlier, 4/6, and has a Sentinel, well, undamaged. I have what I think is a pretty solid answer, though. I'm going to deploy IG-88. and I'm going to give IG-88 a fallen lightsaber, which then gives him +3/+3, taking him up to an 8/7. First, I do play out this Death Star Stormtrooper as well, but then IG-88 up to 8/7, and now with that fallen lightsaber, he can clear out the Vigilant Honor Guard with one attack. He does take 4 damage himself, but thanks to that lightsaber, he has 3 extra HP and does not die from that attack. I now have a buffed up IG-88, able to hit the enemy base for potentially 8, plus the Trooper for more damage, plus whatever I play from hand. If my opponent deploys Luke, I can swing with IG-88 and clear him, so that's also it's a pretty good situation to be in for me. But once again, takedown, IG-88 taken out. I think this is 3 for 3 now on IG-88 being removed by takedown, which is, it's a good card to have for this situation. It's as I was mentioning earlier, very strong against low HP leaders, and these games have kind of demonstrated that. I'm going to bring out a cell block guard, and I can also deploy either the 1st Legion Snowtrooper or the TIE there. My opponent does bring out Luke Skywalker. At this point, I should probably attack. So I attack the enemy base with the Trooper, dealing 3. My opponent has Luke clear the cell block guard. I really wish I had a forced choke here, but I do not. So I deploy the fighter. I'm hoping he doesn't have Luke's lightsaber, but there it is, Luke's lightsaber. So now I'm in a spot of trouble there, with Luke now shielded and bonus stats. So I do have the 2 units. My opponent's base is lower life, but this Luke is going to be a big problem. So I Am Your Father is an interesting card to potentially play against Luke. It's very thematically appropriate at the very least. I don't know that it's going to actually work, though, because my opponent will just give me 3 cards. However, maybe that's what I want. Maybe I want that card advantage. However, I do need to clear the shield first. I decide that I'm going to have my Stormtrooper swing in first at +1 attack thanks to IG-88, just doing extra damage to my opponent's base before he likely gets cleared. My opponent then plays a Wing Leader, which will give Luke 2 experience tokens on top of it all. Not what I want to see. And so in this situation, I have some options. So I could play the Interceptor and clear his Wing Leader. I Am Your Father isn't good here, but I could wait until after Luke attacks and see if Luke is going to kill my Stormtrooper. If Luke does kill the Stormtrooper, I Am Your Father is like an interesting play to some degree, though it suffers from the fact that he has the bonus stats. I end up deciding, wait, actually what I'll do is I'll play my Interceptor and I'll kill that Wing Leader before Luke attacks and gives it a shield. So I was originally going to attack with the TIE, and then I was like, wait, no, can I take that back? My opponent graciously granted me that, and so I was able to take out the Wing Leader. Luke gets killed by the Stormtrooper, but there isn't a unit for Luke to shield. I then swing in with the normal TIE for another 2 damage to the enemy base. And so I outnumber my opponent, and I outnumber my opponent, and I have more life on my base, but that Luke Skywalker is a huge problem for me in the ground arena. Um, let's see how things develop. Luke does no longer have the shields. There is that. I Am Your Father the problem with I Am Your Father right now is that it isn't a one-hit kill. I ideally want to play it in a situation where it's a one-hit kill because my opponent might have another copy of Luke's lightsaber in order to heal back up and give another shield, which would be extremely bad for me if it occurred. In general, Luke's lightsaber, if it's played to remove a bunch of damage, is one of the strongest plays in the game, in my opinion. My opponent has a Vigilance here, which I really don't want to see. Another Vigilance is very bad. That's going to be a bonus 5 life and my TIE Interceptor removed. Really not what I want to see at all. I play another basic TIE Fighter here. Luke swings into my base, hitting me for 9 damage. That's a heavy hit. I'm going to use the IG-88 ability. I do still outnumber my opponent, so that's a small little advantage that I have, and I'm able to get an extra point of damage out of that. I can then, this turn, I could play the I Am Your Father, but I don't think it's good. I could play Aggression is probably going to be my best play, but I could also play the Starwing Scout to try and develop my own board and push damage through. Aggression here, the main value from Aggression would actually be removing upgrades. I could remove one of the experience, and I could remove Luke's lightsaber. I could also potentially do damage to Luke or draw a card or stand up one of my TIE fighters and attack again for more damage to the base, but it's only 2 damage, so it's not that good. Um, One of the advantages of damaging Luke would be that it would set up the potential I Am Your Father for the kill next turn. My opponent would, of course, decline it, but I could then use that to draw 3 cards. So Aggression removes Luke's lightsaber and an experience, and is going to put 4 damage on Luke. This also gets Luke into range of Forced Choke and Open Fire, so if I draw one of those cards, I can potentially kill him. And we're going to go into the next turn. I see an open fire there, which I'm very enthusiastic about. So if he doesn't heal or buff Luke, I can kill him with this open fire. And then I actually feel much more confident about the overall situation, as I will then have I would then have the 2 units in space, still outnumbering my opponent, still able to do significant damage. The Starwing Scout in hand could come out and be a problem. I could buff one of them with, or, maybe I would instead buff one of them with the Snowtrooper Lieutenant. My opponent plays It Binds All Things, so you can remove up to 3 damage to a unit, and if you control a Force unit, you may then deal that much damage to an enemy unit, or maybe just to any unit. So my opponent removes 3 damage from Luke and uses it to kill the TIE. Really not what I want to see. I play I Am Your Father on Luke. He, of course, says no, so I draw 3 cards. I'm hoping this card advantage can draw me into something that will save the day here, but I don't see anything that exciting. And my opponent then plays a Fleet Lieutenant, has Luke hit the base for another heavy hit there. I think 8 damage that time. And my options are not looking great. So I could play another I Am Your Father, but it wouldn't kill Luke. He would just have me draw 3 more cards. I could play one of the I could play out a Snowtrooper Lieutenant to buff the TIE. I could play out the Starwing Scout to get a good unit of my own. I could play an Open Fire and damage Luke and hope that he doesn't have another healing thing. I end up deciding I'm going to play the Starwing Scout. I think it's hard to say what's best here. The other problem is that he can take initiative and do a ton of damage to my base before I have the opportunity to do anything else to stop Luke. So it's not a great situation for me. I do have the Starwing Scout out now, so that's going to be 4-1. Those are some good stats. Can potentially do a bunch of damage, but I don't have the answer for this Luke, and so things are looking grim. On the plus side, having removed his lightsaber, he does only hit for 5 damage, so that's it's a small blessing. Does give a second shield to that Fleet Lieutenant. I'm thinking about what I can do here. I end up deciding, I believe, that I'm going to play an ATST, and that the ATST then could remove Luke and deal a bunch of damage to the base when buffed by a Snowtrooper Lieutenant, which would allow me to potentially gain some advantage. But at this point, I'm so low that it's really kind of a desperate situation. I'm kind of have to hope that I draw a cell block guard and my opponent misplays into it or something. It's really not looking so good. Tunewalker, considering his options, has a lot of resources. We both kind of have a lot of resources at this point, but he has more. It's going to be a takedown, killing my Starwing Scout. This is a situation where an overwhelming barrage would be pretty sweet, but I end up taking the initiative, and my opponent hits my base with the Fleet Lieutenant, dropping me to 1 life, and then also plays out Kanan, and that's basically game. There's just really not a lot that I can do at this point. In fact, I'm not sure there's any card in my deck that would save me, and indeed I don't draw one. So I could, at this point, play the Snowtrooper Lieutenant and have the ATST hit the enemy base for 8, but that's not enough damage to win the game. It would have been enough damage to win the game if my opponent had not healed for 10 with the 2 copies of Vigilance, but he did. Vigilance, very good card in this matchup. I could kill Luke, but the other units there will kill me. And, it's not going to be my game. So that was a third game victory for Tunewalker. This one, so I felt like the first game might have been the closest until I made that blunder. The second game, my opponent's start was really slow. And then this game, I felt like he sort of just won a relatively clean game. Like there wasn't, I don't know that there was a super crucial mistake that I made necessarily. Arguably, I should have tried to remove Luke's lightsaber sooner, but some of it was just like stuff lining up. And, so that ended up going 1-2 in this matchup here. So congrats to Tunewalker for winning the match. And just some thoughts on the matchup. This remains really difficult for the aggressive player because the double blue deck with Vigilance for 4. Vigilance for 4 is an incredibly good card against aggro because usually what you're going to be doing is you're going to be killing a unit, like one of those higher attack, lower defense aggro units, or even a higher stat unit that's wounded. You take them out with the Vigilance ability to kill a unit that has 3 or less HP, and then you have the ability to heal your base for 5 and recover a good chunk of the damage that's been dealt to you during the game. So in this situation, as bad as the board state is for me, if my opponent did not have the 10 life gained from those copies of Vigilance, I would actually have been able to win the game with the ATST here. And obviously, if he had that, he might have played other things differently and so on. So it's not really something you can say really definitively, but the life gain from Vigilance goes a long way to making the situation more difficult for your opponent, making it harder for them to get the damage that they need. And aggressive decks that really want to do damage early are quite vulnerable to that. So those are just some thoughts on the matchup. Right now, aggro is pretty strong in this game, but double blue seems like it's a pretty robust type of build to go if you're trying to counter aggressive gameplay. That's going to do it for this time, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content.